This is Alexa Linton, and you're listening to the Whole Horse Podcast. I'm coming to you from the Cowichan Valley on beautiful Vancouver Island in Canada, and I'm excited to be bringing amazing instructors from around the world to share their knowledge about all the ways that we can keep ourselves and our horses well and happy, and about some of the cutting edge techniques, training, and different aspects that are coming into the horse industry and changing it from within. I'm so excited you're here, and I'm excited about the times that we live in and the shifts that are happening in the horse industry before our eyes. Let's get started. Hi everyone, it's Alexa Linton here, and you're here on the Whole Horse Podcast today. And we're having a bit of a switch up episode today on the podcast because I had this wonderful podcast listener and now friend reach out and say, we need to do a podcast about you and what you're up to. And I was like, what would that be like? So thank you. Thank you for planting the seed, Allie. I really appreciate it, and for being here.
Thank you, Alexa.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm a big fan, so this is exciting for me to be able to participate. I've listened to every episode and many of them multiple times, so I'm a whole horse fangirl.
Wow, you're a groupie. Love it.
I am.
That's awesome. So tell, if you can share with the listeners just a little bit about you and what kind of got us to this moment right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I live in rural Wisconsin, kind of close to the Twin Cities of Minneapolis, St. Paul in the US. And I have been a horse person my whole life, and kind of came up, I think, in a similar discipline that you did, doing jumping and eventing. And I finally got my own horse 2 years ago, who was an off-the-track thoroughbred named Tenzin. And as I started working with Tenzin, I've always been curious, but then I really started exploring a whole new world of how to have a relationship with your horse, and started this thing of where when I drive to the barn, I listen to a horse podcast. And I can't remember exactly how I found you, but I found you fairly early on. And it was an incredible experience for me because it was one of those things where you realize, oh my God, I'm not the only one in the world who sees things this way or is thinking about these different topics. And I just felt so enlivened and encouraged by finding your podcast, and then just became such a religious follower because of that. And just, feel a lot of times like I'm the only one that I know, or one of the only ones in my area who is interested in a lot of these topics. So it's just been such a godsend for me, and made me feel connected to this amazing international network that you have. And then recently I was looking for some more support for myself, and kind of exploring starting my own coaching business and some other horse related stuff. And so wanted to start reaching out and making more connections. And so I went to your website and I found the Whole Horse Apprenticeship, which I'm really excited to participate in this fall. And then I saw that you do these individual sessions, and I was like, well, geez, I don't even know what she does. And I knew from listening to the podcast that you do body work, and I knew about your studies as an osteopath, but I didn't understand anything really about all of the other stuff that you do with the energy medicine and body talk. So now, having done a few sessions with you, that's how I got the idea of just thinking, okay, well, if I've listened to all the episodes, and some of them twice, and I don't understand what Alexa does, then other people probably have questions or don't realize how gifted you are and what you have to offer. So that's why I wanted to give you a forum to tell everybody. And so I do have questions for you, but you can introduce yourself or your experience however you want to take it, whatever direction you want to take it.
Yeah.
Well, it's so interesting. I'm excited about your questions. I mean, yeah, it's been an interesting journey for me because I think I've been doing so. To back the train up, I guess, in my journey, I uh, I started in kinesiology, like the traditional route, university, like bachelor of
Mm-hmm.
science.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I often joke that I had this like my first rebellious moment. I know for like a lot of you may see that I call this like a podcast for horse lovers and their inner rebels. um I feel like I've had all these sort of like rebellious pivotal moments in my life, and
Mm-hmm.
one of them was in fifth year university where I was like, screw it, and I literally like decided that I was going to take the courses that I wanted to take, and I took Spanish and philosophy of religion instead of the two last prereqs that I needed to get into like physio school or medical school or veterinary school.
Yeah.
Like I was like, I'm not doing this. I didn't like at the time I wasn't thinking that way. I was more just like, I want to do what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd always wanted to learn Spanish, and I'd always, there was some things that I just been like really interested in for a long time. And so um at that point, I made this decision, and I was like, I want to shift things up a little bit. And obviously I did. It ended up changing my career path completely, because I was sort of on track to go into some of these other spaces.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, I remember sort of being in that place of like, oh crap, like, what am I going to do now? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what does now look like? Like, I've basically I'd been that kid from the age of like 5 that was like, I'm going to be a veterinarian. Like, that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And I was certain about it. Like, that was happening. And you know, I'm obviously very geeky and pretty smart, and so I could have easily done that. I also am terribly phobic of needles, by the way, everybody.
Mm.
And so I think the choice at the end of the day was probably a great one, to not do that. But it took me down this path because at the time, so in my fifth year of university, so this would have been like 2003. I was getting back into riding. So I'd been away from riding for a while, just purely circumstance. Like, I didn't have a car, and I was at university in residence, and I couldn't get to the
Mm-hmm.
barn. And so finally I got a car, and I started going to the barn, and I ended up working with this horse named Dancer. And he was this huge thoroughbred off the track and had a bunch of physical issues. And he was such a sweet, sweet boy, and he would buck me off sometimes, and it would be so polite, like it was like, I'm really hurting, so you must get off me now. Like, but he would do it in this like tiny little way, like he was like, okay, like, I'm gonna do it so you kind of land on your feet and you're gonna be fine, but like, you got to get off. Um and I just remember thinking at the time, oh my gosh, I've done 5 years of school in kinesiology, which is the study of movement. No idea how to help him, like, not a clue how to help
Mm-hmm.
him. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just felt so frustrated by that. I was like, I don't have any practical hands on thing that I can do for this horse to make his life more comfortable. Like, nothing. And so that was a real momentum builder for me. And I ended up, I mean, it was sort of providence, I think. I happened upon this website for what's called the BC College of Equine Therapy. And I found it, and I went, it was like a strike of lightning. I went, yeah, that's what I need to do
That's
next
awesome.
year if this is
Yeah.
what's happening. Because I was, of course, graduating from university. I was like, okay, I know it. And I was actually just reading a story I wrote in a book called Choosing Happiness, and it was going through this, and I totally forgotten, but I was, I was one of those, like, I applied twice and then called as well, just to make sure that they knew that I needed to get into this school. Um, and what was really interesting about that is that school, um, little did I know at the time, I'd been raised like super black and white, like science, everything. My father literally has a PhD in geophysics. Like,
Oh, wow.
he studied the wobble effect of the earth. Like, that was his thing, right? So, and my mom was a physio, and my grandpa was a doctor, and like, so everything is science and black and white, and this is how it is, and and I just kind of like was veering off to the left in a big way. I was just okay. I'm apparently going a different direction, and I love horses, and I want to do this work. And I got to this school. And little did I know, it was like totally before its time. So this is like 2003. And we were doing like energy work with horses and applied kinesiology and flower essences and like emotional releases. Like, we were an acupressure, like you name it. Like, we were doing it. We covered so much ground, and I constantly look back and think of my teacher Dave Collins like with so much gratitude, because it really opened up my eyes. I mean, it was a horrific 2 years. You could only imagine, like, I had been repressing everything and basically living in a dissociative state
Yeah.
for like my whole life up until that point. I'm super highly sensitive, I'm super intuitive, and that was how I kind of coped with a lot of things. And so this was like the ultimate thaw out process. Like, we talk about that with horses a lot, like them thawing out. Like, this was what happened to me. It was so messy. Like, I need to send Dave a box of chocolates or something
for putting up with you.
Yeah. That was a mess. So yeah, that was a 2-year program. And the horses, like, I often tell the story of like how the horses wouldn't let me touch them, like at the beginning of the training, and and how challenging that was for me, who was like, oh my gosh, like, what am I doing? And then the learning that came from the horses around everything from grounding to trusting myself to just on and boundaries, all the things, plus a ton of energy work and really crazy cool stuff that would just come up. Like, I recall a situation when I was fairly new starting out, and I went out to one barn, and the woman there talked to all her horses. Like, her horses were tuned in, and I'd been working on them for a while, so they were really comfortable with me. And I remember this one day, this mare Tess, and at this point I was like starting to tune into my animal communication stuff more and like trust myself a little bit more, and I would use my applied kinesiology to kind of get confirmation. And I was working on this mare Tess, and I'd been having trouble with something with Diva at home, and I'll like hear like some of the stuff that I'll say today for some of you might like push some buttons, because it's like, it's a little out there, but this is where I've been in my work. So Tess, basically, I got this message from her that she's like, I'm going to teach you the thing that you're trying to learn in the round pen with your mare Diva, so you can figure this out. And I was like, what? And she's like, yeah, we're going to take me up to the round pen. We're going to figure this out. I was like, and so, thankfully these people were very open to what was going on. And I was like, okay, like, what's the worst that can happen? Like, nothing. Let's see. And this was kind of consistent in my training and beyond, like horses just doing stuff that blew my mind over and over and over, until it was like somebody just going, you're gonna believe this, you're gonna like, because I was like, no, there's no way, no, science mind, no, that can't, no. And she took me, like, we went up to the round pen, and I let her go, and she basically showed me this whole thing of what I needed to do with Diva.
Wow.
And we were all like crying, like, we were all like, her mom was there, and this woman that had the farm was there, and they were watching over the fence, and I was standing in the middle of the round pen, and we're all just like, oh my God, and having this in awe moment. And and then after that, so she's like, okay, my work here is done. Off she goes. And I kid you not, I kid you not, I wish I'd got it on video, 4 horses lined up, like one after the other, because the round pen was in the middle of their paddock area. So they could just come and go out of the round pen, and they all just entered the round pen like in line, and then they would stick a body part in front of me.
Wow.
I'd be like, I need you to work here. I need you to work here. And then they, like, when they got what they needed, they would leave. And then they would just, so yeah, it was like 4 horses or something. And we were all just like, what? You know, I think all of our minds were completely blown apart by the end of that day. And so that sort of thing would happen all the time with me. And while this was going on, there was other things sort of happening in parallel. So when I started equine therapy school in 2003, September of 2003, 2 months later, I met Diva, my mare. So, it was just like, again, strike of lightning. Like, this is my horse that I've been waiting for my whole life. You know, at this point I was 23, and I just knew, I met her because she happened to be at the barn I was at. That her mom like lent her to me for a day to ride. And that was it. And she was not well trained at that point. It's kind of like riding a piece of plywood. Like, she couldn't really turn that well. She was only 4. She hadn't had much ring training, but she was just, there was something about her, and she literally, I couldn't get her off my mind for about 3 days. And I came home and I was like, okay, like, this needs to happen. And I figured it out, and you know, poor student, I was like, okay, how am I going to get the money for this? What am I going to do? So I was really creative, and by the end of December, made the last payment. And I mean, that has been a crash course unto itself that probably deserves its own podcast, really, talking about our journey together. But it weaves into the work that I started to do and continue to do. You know, one of the things Diva shared with me, I was sort of getting into animal communication and things at the time, and I had a really amazing animal communicator friend, and I asked her to do a reading with Diva, and it was such a simple message, but so profound. It was essentially, and for those of you, you know, that probably don't, or you may, I mean, I you know, I think at that time, 2003, 2004, this is when my sense of spirit like started to come online. And before that, I think I'd been in a church like 3 times total. Like, religion was not a part of my upbringing, nor was spirituality. Like, we did not mention God in our household. That was not a thing. So I was starting to understand it more, and my sort of place in the bigger picture of things, because I'd never really had a sense of that ever. And it started to, like, all of this started to filter in, and I was like, oh, I get it. I get, like, why these things happen, and, you know, my sensitivity, and it started to really make sense. And so when this communication happened with Diva, it was essentially like, you know, we've been put here to show people the possibilities of being friends in different bodies, basically best friends in different bodies. So I've really carried that through with me, that message of like what that means to share with people, you know, what that can look like, you know, to literally be the best of friends, but living in very, very different, different bodies, but having that type of connection and communication. And that's how I felt with Diva through our time together. And our beginning was very bumpy, like very bumpy, to the point where a lot of people are like, you need to sell this horse. She's not right for you. You know, she's too much for you, all of these things. And throughout it all, the thing that was so consistent for me was that that spiritual connection with her, that sense of like, the strength of that connection
Right.
with
Yeah.
her. And I even now, like there was times where, you know, I didn't have the money to keep her, or it was a huge struggle to make it work, or I couldn't find a boarding stable for her, or, you know, all of these things, or I was struggling so deeply with my own stuff. And I would just sit in and go, yeah, like we're together until the end. That's it. Until one of us kicks it, that's it.
Right.
And I made that promise to her right at the beginning of our time together. And that's, you know, that's absolutely how it's going to be, you know. Yeah, she's probably the most important being in my whole life. No offense, anybody else, but yeah.
I always have to be careful when I say things like that, because I'm married. So
I know, right? I know completely.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't have to worry about that part, but
Yes.
yeah, I love my family, absolutely, and yeah, she has been a master teacher for me, a master teacher. So that, you know, that was the start of it, and I went from equine therapy school, and I actually trained with for a year with Sandra Wallen on the mainland here in BC, doing equine facilitated wellness work, and a course that she calls Energy and the Art of Equus. The Art of Equus, and we did a year-long apprenticeship in that. Wow, like that knocked the lid off a lot of my like overachiever perfectionist stuff for sure. And it was beautiful. I was able to bring Diva over a lot of the time, and you know, really witness her in her strengths in that way. It was amazing, and I look back on that so fondly. And yeah, I just kind of continued on. I as you probably realize, I'm a voracious learner. So I just want more. Like if I'm not going to school, I'm just like, oh, I don't like this. I want to be in school. I want to be learning stuff. And so I kept going. I learned EFT and Reiki and, you know, Psych K and like, yeah, all sorts of things along the way. And eventually, you know, as I was becoming more proficient as an equine sport therapist, I added flower essence work. I took courses in flower essence, flower essences, and I added that in because I started to realize there was this emotional piece that I was missing, and I really wanted tools around that. And that was amazing. I just loved. I still love working with them, and eventually, I came to this place of like, oh my God, I have to start working on the humans. I must start working on the humans. I didn't want to, you know, I was like, oh gosh, it was more so like thinking of working on humans like I worked on horses. I was like, I'm not going to massage people. That's not happening. And so so then I was like, okay, what can I do? And that's when I happened upon Body Talk. And at the time, Body Talk had an aspect that was animal talk. So there was ways to work with animals as well. I thought that was fantastic. And so I started that. I kind of went to a first little intro session. And I was like, this sounds like the perfect thing. And off I went to the races, as I often do. I just kind of dive right in. And so within about 4 years of that, I was teaching Body Talk Access for animals. And I'd done most of the modules plus some of the advanced modules at that point, and had created, my business was probably like half Body Talk and half equine therapy work. And yeah, I just like everything, I just kind of ate it up. I loved it, and it was so beneficial for improving my intuition, and also super beneficial for my own well-being and what I was working with, which was a lot of emotional clearing and a lot of old patterning and a lot of stuff that I was going, holy crap, like how is this all in here right now? And just seeing the impacts of all those things on my physical body. And Body Talk was
I want to stop you for a second, because I think a lot of your listeners don't know what Body Talk is. Do you
Oh
think,
yeah,
could you
totally. I
could you give us
know.
a
So that's
definition?
I can try. So body talk, it's an interesting one for me actually. Like I have, and I'll talk about this in a little bit. I have some mixed feelings about body talk, but
Hmm. Hmm.
the system itself is, and why I keep working with it even now, it's freaking fantastic. So I there's probably a few things to define. So going back a little bit of a ways here was around applied kinesiology. So I learned it with horses initially,
Hmm.
and applied kinesiology is essentially muscle testing. So a lot of people, it's like woo woo out there, energy work stuff. I love working with it with horses. I find it incredibly helpful on a number of levels.
Hmm.
Just a second here. So hello. And I, with that applied kinesiology, I just had so much success. And I actually started teaching. Like I have a course called Kinetic Communication, which is
Hmm.
all about applied kinesiology and how you can use it to communicate with the animals, because it is so freaking helpful. And it's so good for people that don't trust their intuition. Like they just don't. And that was me, right? I was like,
Hmm.
I don't trust that I'm getting the right answer here. And so I could go to applied kinesiology and I could check it and like make sure. And that was amazing for me. And so yeah, and you can look up either, my course or applied kinesiology. I'm sure there's lots of like those, the like quack doctor things
Yeah.
about applied kinesiology. But you know what? I find it so goddamn helpful. It is like one of my favorite tools, absolutely. And body talk, its foundation is what they call biofeedback, but I think of as applied kinesiology.
Oh.
So for me, it was kind of a no-brainer to start doing that work because I was already doing a lot of the biofeedback stuff. It just totally made sense to me. And so when I got into it, I started to realize so body talk, essentially how it works. They call it a consciousness-based medicine system, and it's like giving structure to all the things that you want to look at and test around. So like in applied kinesiology, we're asking questions to get yes and no answers and sort of see where we want to go, or what the body needs. And so with body talk, it's basically using that, but within a structure that's like set, a little bit more set. So you can actually find your way through the structure and get more information. And there's also the sense that oftentimes when the body's having trouble with something, it either needs to reconnect to something else or potentially like disconnect from something else.
Hmm.
So say like I've got an active memory around a car accident I had when I was 17, and I get these recurring knee pains from that accident because I'm holding like all the fear or grief or whatever from that accident. It's still active in me. So with body talk, you can go back, find the date, find what happened, find the emotion, and actually disconnect it from, the nervous system or whatever, whatever you're needing to do there. Highlight that time so that the body can actually like release the emotion around it. And it's freaking amazing. It works so well.
Yeah.
It works so well, as you've been experiencing, right? Like for the right person. Some people, it's not a thing for them, but a lot of people, it works so well. And I, of course, so I'll give you like the short version. Anything else with body talk I'll come back around to it, but any other questions around it?
No, I was going to give an example actually from Tenzin.
Yeah, totally.
That I thought was so interesting because you were just saying about how you felt that the emotional piece was missing from some of the other equine therapy.
Yes.
And
totally.
So when we did our first session and we connected with Tenzin, I was telling you that he's got just kind of an aversion to the saddling process. And that, when I put the saddle on and the girth on, he was just giving me these terrible reactions and pinning his ears and swinging around like he was going to bite me. And then we'd move on and he'd be fine. And I did absolutely everything you could think of physically, like head to toe with him, like vet check. Then I did chiro. He has a body worker. He's had craniosacral work. He's like everything you could think of. I checked with another animal communicator, and she said, well, I'm not getting any pain. And I just could not figure it out. And so I ended up feeling like, well, he just doesn't want me to ride. But then I would get on and he would be super happy. And then he was telling the animal communicator he likes riding. So I couldn't figure it out. And then we did that session with you. And you said, just like you were just explaining, that there was an old memory there, some kind of trauma. And you did your magic. And then literally the next time I went to see him, I went to saddle him. And it was the very first time ever he had no reaction. Like just perfectly content, didn't have any indication of any discomfort or unhappiness. And so that was the moment for me where I was like, okay, yeah, this is a real thing. Nobody else could help with this situation. And now it's better. And I also used some flower essences with him. So that's my testimonial.
Yes.
Yeah. And,
that's awesome.
Occasionally since then, it's like there'll be little flickers, where it comes back. But yeah, it's very interesting what you're saying about how the emotions connect to the physical. So.
Oh yeah, it's all so interrelated. There's no way that you can disconnect all of that, which was like, when I look at why I do the work that I do, I'm still an overachiever. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, it's like better hidden now, but when it comes to stuff like healing work and this sort of thing that I do, like, it is in me to want to create the best result possible.
I get it. I'm with you. Fellow overachiever.
I can't help myself. Yeah. I can't help myself. I'm always going to have that part of me. I just need to channel it into good stuff, And so when I found these tools, that was when I was like, oh damn, like this works so well. And there's horses and humans, like I said, where it doesn't work, but for the ones that it works for, it's crazy what can happen in one session. Like that's why I love it. I also like, I don't know who wouldn't like get a bit like excited about stuff shifting so fast, in like really positive ways. Like I just think that's so cool that can happen. And like I think it's important that I share here. Like, I don't think of myself as a healer, like at all. Because I think that takes too much credit. Like when we're doing healing work, my role is literally to hold space and be aware and intuitive, right? So all the stuff is already there in the innate wisdom of the body. My job, I think of it as, is like, I am being present for it and watching it and seeing it unfold and shining a light on it, maybe, so that it can actually do what it, it's sort of like catalyzing the thing that was already wanting to happen, or moving assisting in moving a block away that was maybe preventing something from opening up in that system, right? But it's like the system, that's the way it wanted to go anyways. It wanted to go, like when we see horses, it's one of the reasons horses are so fun to work on. I just love working on horses, and most animals, to be honest, because they want to heal. They want to heal so goddamn bad. And they don't have all the same human stuff in the way of that healing process.
Right.
So it's so rewarding because like they're just like going, in that direction already of like, I want to feel good in my body. I want to feel content and happy and centered, and I want my nervous system to be balanced. Like they're already going there, right? They don't like living in pain. They don't like living in anxiety. Like it's not ideal for them, right? And their body, some part of their body knows that that's not sustainable for them. And so it's such a beautiful thing to be able to tune in and just be like, okay, how can I help with that? Like, what what do we need to do to allow that body to do the healing it wants to do? And it's just so amazing. It's just so amazing. So that's how I kind of think of myself, is just, being there, being a witness to what already wants to occur, and then just honing my ability to be aware and be intuitive. Yeah. So it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that brings up a couple of different questions that I've thought of too with you. So one was, when you talk about honing that ability, a lot of times you hear stories from people who do kind of the animal communication piece, that like they just always could hear animals, or someday they were doing something and they just suddenly started hearing animals. And I've been studying animal communication just casually on my own and trying to develop some of the skills myself. And I'm not having one of those like amazing, insightful moments where like I suddenly just hear the horse. I think my intuition's getting stronger, but I wanted to ask you about that. Like, was it, you made a conscious decision to develop these skills, obviously with all your training, or was it like, you were just like, all of a sudden the sun shone down on you and you could hear animals,
Like a Lion King moment?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, I'm the first, like, not in my mind gifted at all at animal communication. Even sometimes still think that I'm terrible at it. I mean, that might be my perfectionist speaking, but no, I can't, I remember listening, like my friend Laura is like, I was talking to mice when I was a little girl, and I listening to them wanting to be let out of the cages, and I'm like, no, none of that. I think that I probably heard our family dog tell me he hated me. Like, I think that was maybe the first animal communication of like, you terrible, terrible child for being born. I was the only one, and I was so happy. But that might have just been my judgment around it. It has been a developed skill, and like only developed because I have been so persistent and stubborn about it. Because for me, like that, having that communication at least somewhat on board with me is so important in my other work. So it's been, like teaching the animal communication class has been in some ways challenging, because like there's still times where I'm like, I don't trust myself. Like, I don't trust what I'm getting. And that's, like you're supposed to be the teacher and like, I got this. And so it's constantly a practice, and it's constantly redeveloping and looking at like our areas of trickiness or weakness. Like, I'm really strong kinesthetically, like, and you may find this, Allie, like, and listeners may find this, like, I just get an answer and I'm like, I know that this is the thing, and I don't know where the information came from, which is highly annoying. It's like different than someone whispering in your ear, like, this is what you need to do. It's more like, I just feel it in my body. I feel it in my bones. And sometimes we just don't listen to that. I mean, we've all had that experience of like, I remember years ago, and like I got this message. This was a little bit more of a whisper, but it was also a knowing of like, you need to get off your horse now. Like, and I was like, no, it's fine. That's not a thing. And then literally within about 30 seconds, we were riding past this pond, a massive heron flew out, and I was like on my back in the mud, like full on, because I'd been riding with a halter and one lead line and bareback, my black horse was nowhere to be seen. I was still hanging onto the rope, as we do, but I just didn't listen, I just didn't listen. And since then I've gotten a lot better about like, and there are those weird moments. I remember having like one where I was going to a party like 2 hours away, and this intuition was like, you need to bring an extra pair of pants. And I was like, no, I don't need a goddamn extra pair of pants. Like, I'm going to a party. I'm coming home later. It's fine. And like, wouldn't you know it, like 45 minutes into the party, someone pours like an entire jar of salsa on my leg. And I'm just like, God damn it. Like, really, really, like, this is how it's going to go down. And that's exactly it. it was like, getting that message and going, okay, next time I'm going to listen to that, that intuition. But it's a long and the short, no, not a gift, not bestowed on me from the heavens in that way. And really a myth that it needs to be.
Yeah.
Really a myth that it needs to be. Most people, that's not how it rolls. And I truly believe that every person can communicate with their animals in some shape or form. It might not look how they want it to look, but in some shape or form, they're getting information all the time from their animals. And oftentimes it's like, for us, it's like clearing the paths for that, right? Because we have judgment, or we don't believe it, or we're, feel doubt or whatever, right? And so those things get in our way more than anything else. That's been really my journey, is like clearing all that stuff out of the way. And so that's what I would say to that. I hope that's helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's very encouraging. And I think also that this piece about the baggage that gets in the way is also related to what you were saying about animals and healing. And I've been thinking about that too with the work that you do, wondering about if you encounter, I suppose people who come to you for help are probably not the people that are super skeptical to begin with, because they wouldn't even be going down this road. But just about, do you come up against that with people, where people have doubts or just this overriding analytical thinking mind that can block the natural healing that their body wants to do, or that is, that could be happening there?
Oh yeah. Big time. It happens all the time. I did it for years, right? And I think we're all on some spectrum of being sensitive or intuitive. When I first started getting energy medicine, I didn't feel anything. I just had to trust that something was being right. And some people I'll get on a call with, do a session, and they'll be like, I feel all the things that you're doing. I can feel your hand on my head. I can, And other people, I'll be like, how you feeling? And they're like, not feeling anything. I feel kind of relaxed. That's about it. Like that's, and when I started, I felt less than that. I was just numb. So I didn't feel anything. Now, oh my God, I feel everything. But that's, like from 2000, that's like 16 years of work to really like be fully in my body and engaged in that. It is snowing out right now, by the way.
It's snowing here too. That's funny. We're very far away from each other.
Like, what is happening right now? I do not know. It is crazy. I don't know where my horses are. But hopefully they're okay.
Taking shelter.
Yeah, what the heck, everybody?
Actually, this is pretty normal for us. Snow in April is not an unusual thing.
Not normal for us. So it looks more hailish, actually. Quite a bit more hailish. Yeah, that's fun. So that's what I would say to that. For me, it's one of the reasons I love to teach this stuff, is because I know so well what that self-doubt feels like and how crippling it can be to our learning process and to our ability to kind of be in that beginner's mind of like, I am going to suck at this. Like, I am going to be terrible at this at the beginning, and it's okay that I don't have to have this all dialed right away. And I know, when I first started learning applied kinesiology, oh my God, like it took forever. It took so long for me to trust what I was getting. And still there's days where I'm like, oh, it takes a long time, especially if we tend to be, and I'm speaking from personal experience, more self-critical or, harder on ourselves, right?
Which it seems like a lot of riders are too. Yeah. Like it seems like a lot of horse people have the same problem. Maybe because we're all, not all, but a lot of us are overachievers and perfectionists. And so there is this piece that goes with that to be self-critical.
Totally.
Yeah. Is there more that
and there's
Go ahead.
There's more to it. I mean, I think, it's one of the places I absolutely adore working, to be honest. Like, though, people that are working with that stuff are some of my favorite people to work with. And it's, a lot of my clients are like you, Allie, like riders or animal people. And, we're there for a reason. It's yes, like on one hand, yeah, we might be overachievers or perfectionists or whatnot, but on the other hand, we value that there's something there where we're like so in value of that connection as well, and we're seeking that depth of connection and partnership in horses. And we often get a little sticky in there, right? Because we're kind of battling between these two sides of like, I want to, please my barn mates and show that I can do this and that I, like all this stuff. And then this other side that's like, I want to connect with my horse, and that's why I'm here. Like, that's what it's about. And so we're often in this battle place of like these two sides of things. And I just love working with those kind of people because I think like that's me. Like, it's like working on myself, and I know that I can be helpful because I just get it. Like, I just so get the complexity of that dynamic within us, of this conflict that sometimes arises between, maybe we call it our human self and our spiritual self, or right, like this place where we kind of get a little stuck in the middle. Okay, how do I move forward here in the best possible way with this amazing being that's chosen to share this path with me, even though it may look a little different, I'm sure you feel that sometimes at the barn. You're like, I'm doing like positive reinforcement training or this or that, and it feels really weird because nobody else is doing that. Like, there takes a certain amount of inner strength to be able to step into that place and make those changes and do something that's really different, because human beings, we're wired to want to fit in.
Yeah, absolutely.
We want to fit in and belong. And so a part of my work is like releasing some of that conditioning so we can actually get on with doing things the way that feels right for us and what feels right in our hearts, and not feel pulled into, I have to do it this way because everybody else is doing this way, or I'm scared that I'm going to be judged or criticized if I do it this way. I just love that work, love that aspect of the work so much. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it takes
I'm a little passionate about it.
Yes, I am too. And I think it takes courage, to do the work that you're doing, coming from the background that you came from. I was thinking about the story that you're telling. I had a similar kind of overachieving academic background, and, even just my exploration into these areas has made people uncomfortable. And I use my own judgment about who I tell what, in terms of what I'm interested in. And people who I know are going to be totally closed-minded, I'm not going to start talking. But, to do what you've done and choose to really take a stand, and this is my career path, this is the work that I'm here to do, I'm sure that you've had to come up against a lot of that in your own social circles and, various experiences.
Yeah. I mean, realistically, and I maybe, I don't know how many people this is like. I mean, I live in a very open-minded place. I'm here on Vancouver Island. It's very progressive, very open-minded, which is great. So really my own worst enemy, often myself, more than anything else.
Sure.
Which I'm really, in a lot of ways blessed to have that, as many of you know, like I'm interviewing people that live down the road. Like I just interviewed Heather Nelson. She lives like 15 minutes from me. She's doing amazing work and spreading academic art of riding on the island. Like these kinds of people are just like a stone's throw from me. And so, but that's not the case for a lot of people. And that feeling of external criticism and judgment can be so crippling. And yeah, and I hope that this podcast has been able to give, some strength to those people like you, Allie, that
Yeah.
feel like, oh my God, I'm all alone in this. Maybe I'm not, maybe I'm crazy. Like, I just hope that it brings like strength to your heart and like, okay, like I'm okay. Like I'm on the right track. Like, um, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Cause man, yeah, I want this for horses, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I think I think that's my sneaky. So just so you all know, like I'm very, when it comes